All right, let's talk about the just war theory. Now, the just war theory is important to understand because it is the basis for international law in regards to war. So we look at different documents from the United Nations, international criminal tribunals. They all come down to the idea of what makes a war just. Okay, so why are we talking about the just war theory in World War II? Well, there was a lot of horrible stuff that happened in World War II that we really need to look at from an ethical standing as well, to understand kind of why this is important, why this is significant, and really what can be done to make sure this does not happen again. Now, originally, the just war theory is going to come from classic Greece and classic Rome, okay, philosophers like Plato and Cicero, and then it's going to be expanded by the theologians and the thinkers Augustine and Aquinas, okay, so they're going to take these ancient ideas, Augustine and Aquinas, Renaissance era, taking these ideas, this rebirth, and bringing forth into a new idea, and really documenting it with the just war theory. So these ideas we're talking about right here, they're not new. They've been around since really the dawn of classic civilization. Now, it's going to take the belief that war is inevitable. It's going to happen, okay? We cannot avoid war. So, because we cannot avoid war, we've got to find a way to try to fight war in an ethical or a just manner. Now, it's going to state that number one, taking human life is seriously wrong. You should not be killing people. To take a life is wrong. Number two is going to state that states have a duty to defend their citizens and to defend justice. States here meaning countries, okay? Political entities have a duty to defend their citizens that are living within their state and to defend justice, to defend what is right and to defend against those who are doing things that are wrong. Lastly, it is going to believe that protecting innocent human life and defending important moral values sometimes requires the willingness to use force and violence. So on occasion, it must be okay to use force because you need to use force to protect human life and to defend important moral values. When you have to use violence to do this, then it can be justified. Now, moving forward, there's going to be two different parts of the just war theory, okay? Jus ad bellum is going to be the first one, which is simply talking about the conditions under which the use of military force is justified. To put it simply, how to start a war, okay? What do you need to do to start a war in an ethical or in a just manner? And jus in bello is going to be the second one, which is how do you conduct a war in an ethical manner? So, how do you fight a war? Jus ad bellum, how do you start a war? Jus in bello, how do you fight a war? Okay, and how do you ultimately go about and end that war? So looking into a little bit more detail, jus ad bellum, in order for a war to be just, okay, to start a war in an ethical manner, you must do it for a just cause. Okay, you have to have a reason for starting the war. Number two, that war must be lawfully declared by a lawful authority. Okay, you can't just have one rogue individual in a state and say, hey, we're going to start a war. That does not work. Okay, it has to be a lawful declaration of war by the lawful authority within that individual country. And the intention behind the war must be good. Okay, you must have a good intention for this. You're not starting a war just because you don't like that guy and you want to make him look bad. Okay, you have to be trying to do a good thing. All other ways of resolving the problem should have been tried first, okay? So you shouldn't just say, hey, let's go to war because we don't like what's going on with this country. You have to try everything else first. Only when that fails do you then go to war, okay? So all other options have to be exhausted first. There must be a reasonable chance of success. If you do not have a chance of success and a chance of winning the war, you should not be starting that war because you're just sending your soldiers to slaughter, and that is not ethical. You must have a reasonable chance of success. Now, does this mean that if you start a war and you end up losing that war, it's not ethical? No. As long as you had a chance of winning that war, a reasonable chance, like any old fool would believe you had a good shot at winning, it's going to be successful. Or it's not going to be successful, it's going to be an ethical war. The means that are used must be in proportion to what the war seeks to achieve, okay? So if you're trying to bring about peace, you must go about it in a fairly ethical way, okay? You should not be causing more harm by using the war than you would be if you did not get involved in the war, okay? Now, jus in bello, how do you fight a war? Number one, innocent people and non-combatants should not be harmed, okay? You do not bomb civilians. You do not bomb those who are not fighting you. Okay, now this is going to include prisoners of war. Although they were once a member of the other side, they were trying to hurt you and to harm you. They are now non-combatants because they have surrendered. You do not harm them, okay? Doing so is in violation of the just war theory. Only appropriate force should be used, and this is important and it applies to both the sort of force that is used and how much force is used, okay? Just because they've bombed you does not give you the right to drop a bunch of bombs in the same area, okay, or in response to this. You have to use appropriate force, making sure it is justified, okay? This is kind of a tit for tat kind of thing. You do this, they do this. You do this, they do this, back and forth. You're not going to just suddenly escalate, okay? If they accidentally violate your airspace, you do not respond by dropping a nuclear bomb on a hospital. You just don't do that, okay? Internationally, agreed upon conventions regulating war must be obeyed. So the international laws of war, okay, the Rome statutes, as they're officially called, and other things like that, the Geneva Convention, you must obey those things. So you do not target civilians, okay? You do not put your soldiers in Red Cross convoys and start moving them that way, okay? You do not bomb civilians. You do not use chemical weapons. These are all things that unfortunately have happened in the recent years, so understand that, okay? That is the last thing to understand when it comes to talking about the ethical ways to fight a war. Questions, comments, put it below. Otherwise, I will see you later. Good luck.